Hi, this is Cary Pilet, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about the chemicals in our brain and how they work normally and what drugs will affect how these chemicals work. So I want to start with the first one, and the first one I'm going to talk about is adrenaline. The other term for that one is epinephrine. Okay? Adrenaline, you probably are familiar with that word, with that term. It happens when somebody cuts you off in traffic. That's the best way to think about what happens. Because what happens? You immediately have everything tighten up. You have a grip on the steering wheel, right? Your heart starts pounding. Your eyes, you see mine, your eyes get really big and you start breathing real rapidly. Okay, that is adrenaline coming out into your body. And it came out fast and it came out big. Why? Because you were feeling threatened. They cut you off. I thought I was going to crash my car. My life flashed in front of my eyes. I thought I was going to die. And so your body responds with its fight and flight. Gets out its adrenaline so that you can react quickly, respond, have extra energy. Think about the things you can do when your adrenaline is out there. I mean, you see people do this. They drag people out of cars. They pick things up that on a given day they could never do. But when their fight and flight kicks in and they have all of this adrenaline, we have a lot more strength, a lot more energy. We do things we couldn't imagine because it's out there. Okay? That one is in the central nervous system, which is in the brain and spinal cord, as well as large concentrations in the brainstem, which should explain a lot to you because the brainstem is where the body functions are, aren't they? And so if we're having trouble breathing, it would make sense we're going to be able to stimulate that one very, very quickly. Adrenaline is stored in your body kind of like a glow stick. You have an emergency glow stick? I have one in my glove compartment just in case the lights go out. And how do you get a glow stick to work? You crack it and shake it, right? And it immediately starts glowing, and it doesn't take time. It's not like a fluorescent bulb that you have to give it a minute. No. You break it and it go like this and it is immediately bright and you can see. That's how adrenaline is stored in your body. It's in an inactive form, but when we say, oh my God, I need it, we crack it and there it is. Okay? We take it out of the spaces between the nerves. We have to throw it away. So the body is always making adrenaline, putting it into its inactive form and saving it for when we need it. Okay? The inactive form, or the opposite of adrenaline, they call it norepinephrine. And when we talk about how drugs work in the body, there's a balance between these two. That's important as we talk about drugs and how they affect us in the body, because they're either going to be stimulating adrenaline or they're not stimulating adrenaline. Okay? So what kind of drugs make our hearts beat faster? Cocaine, right? Methamphetamine, all of the stimulants in life make our hearts beat faster. Okay, so they have to stimulate some of this adrenaline. What drugs kind of sedate us? Help us to chillax. Okay, well, if we quit partying, alcohol does that, right? Marijuana does that. Xanax does that, because these are the downers. And so when we're using a downer, we have less adrenaline around and more of the anti-adrenaline, which gives us the balance. When we're using an upper like cocaine or amphetamines or meth, we have more adrenaline around because it stimulates it. Causes the heart rate to go up, causes the blood pressure to go up. Okay? So that's the first chemical. The second chemical I want to talk about is called dopamine. Dopamine is your feel-good neurotransmitter. Okay? When something wonderful happens in your life, oh my God, I met Miss Wonderful. You get that warm, glowy feeling. That is your dopamine release. Okay? When you pass that test, when you got that promotion, when you got that new job, okay, that rush you feel is your body's release of dopamine. When you orgasm, body's release of dopamine. Same thing. Are you with me? Okay? All drugs that affect us, that give us a buzz, have to stimulate dopamine because that is the feedback loop. If it wasn't pleasurable, we wouldn't do it again. Just like people don't smoke my yard clippings and aren't out there stripping my oak tree bark because it doesn't do anything. But you smoke a little pot and you get that initial dopamine release before it moves on to its main transmitter. If it didn't do that, if it didn't have that pleasurable feedback, we wouldn't do it. All drugs that give us a buzz, that make us high, have to stimulate dopamine at least a little bit. Okay? So the drugs that directly stimulate dopamine are cocaine and amphetamine. I mean, they just target it, push it all out there. Dopamine is only in the central nervous system with huge concentrations right here. I was online looking at thermal imaging of the brain, and they have some for ecstasy out there, and they have some for cocaine. And they'll say, here's a person before, and here's a person after they've used, and you just see this, the center of their head and their brain just glows bright red right here. This is where the concentrations of dopamine are, right here in the frontal lobe of that cerebral cortex. Okay, so you stimulate that, and you get that warm feeling. Okay, when it's stimulated, we feel euphoric. We feel high, we feel floaty. Okay, we feel good. That feel good neurotransmitter I talked about. When we overstimulate it, we can get agitated because too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing. Long-term stimulation, so some of these drugs can lead to paranoia, where I think people are out to get me when they're really not. Okay, here's the deal with dopamine. Dopamine is one of those transmitters that has to be recycled. Okay, so when we're using things like cocaine and we're using things like methamphetamine, which cause the body to put way more dopamine out there than it would on its own, I call it doing brain damage. Because we put too much chemical in the space, we get this twitchiness. We don't really feel in our brain, so we don't feel the twitchiness. But if you've ever had a twitchy eye that just wanted to, and it drove you crazy, that's what's going on in your brain when you use these kind of drugs. We got too much there. It's hyper-stimulating the nerve endings in the brain. The brain can't get it out, the chemical can't get out of there fast enough, so it sits in space, causing twitching. Okay, so we're hurting the little nerve endings. The next time we use it, it isn't quite the same effect if you talk to people. And that really isn't the same effect, because in my mind, you've now damaged the little nerve endings. The body says, whoa, I way overreacted there. And it tries not to do it again. So we get all kinds of things working against getting that initial effect with these drugs when we use them, because it really does hurt. It puts out way more than we ever would on our own. Okay? Body's feel-good neurotransmitter, dopamine. Third is serotonin. Now, a lot more people are hearing about this one because we're doing a lot more advertising about things like depression and anxiety, sleep problems. And people are learning, the general public is learning about serotonin and needing to have a balance of this in order to feel good. Okay? Serotonin is your stabilizing neurotransmitter. So when you have plenty of serotonin around, you have energy. You don't feel too tired. You're able to sleep. You're able to function during the day. Okay? Serotonin is the first one that I'm going to talk about that is in the central nervous system as well as out in the body. So it's the first one that gets outside of the central nervous system. It's out in the periphery too, which is cool. Means we can potentially use it to help other things out there. Serotonin, when it's stimulated, causes us to be more sedate. It tends to calm us down. So when we go to sleep at night and our brainstem is kicking in, we are releasing more serotonin so that we calm down, so that we can go to sleep. We do that overnight. As the morning rolls around, we're putting the serotonin away and getting out a little bit of adrenaline to wake us up. You see my hands going? Because it's like a teeter-totter effect. More serotonin, I got to have less adrenaline, right? Because I can't go home after I've been cut off in traffic and go to sleep, can I? I got way too much glow stick going there. Got to calm down a little bit, right? So we have a balance between these two. If we're stimulating serotonin, we have to be depressing the adrenaline, because we can't have both going at the same time. Okay, we're either doing one or the other. That's how the body works normally. Okay, drugs that stimulate serotonin, marijuana, LSD, anything that causes you to hallucinate stimulates serotonin. So PCP, LSD, ecstasy, true ecstasy, which is MDMA, will stimulate serotonin as a part of how it works in the body. A little bit of dopamine followed by push for serotonin, because that's its major chemical stimulant when we use it. Okay. Number 4 is called GABA. It's got a huge chemical name that I can't say, so I don't expect you to say it. Everybody abbreviates it. GABA. GABA, is your body's natural tranquilizer. Okay, so this is like brain Xanax. Okay? When you get anxious because you have a job interview, because you've been studying for a test, because you met this person and you think they might be the one, whatever, you get those little butterflies in your stomach, okay? Your body's going to put out a little bit of this to help keep you calm. Here's one thing I really like about our body. It puts out little bits of stuff. If it made it so we weren't anxious, would we be motivated to do anything? Probably not. We'd stop because I feel good, right? But when it takes off the edge so that I can still function, so that I can go in and take the test, so that I can go and talk to this person, so that I can, excuse me, go to my new job or whatever, it takes the edge off so that we can do what we need to do, but we still feel it. When we use the chemicals that increase GABA, okay, we again push out more of the chemical than our body does on its own. So what kind of things stimulate GABA? Xanax. Alcohol. We think alcohol's major one is serotonin, but it's not. It's GABA. It's more of a tranquilizer. And I get people that scratch their head and say, but people drink when they go out and they're active and they party. Yep, they do. And as long as they keep moving, they tend to do okay. But when you have somebody that's been drinking sit down quietly, what happens to them? Yeah, they get more sedate. They get more sedate. They will go to sleep if they've had enough because they have actually sedated themselves. Okay? So, again, we have a seesaw thing. If you have more GABA, do you have a lot of adrenaline? No, you don't, because they're opposites. Okay? The final one is called endorphins. And the endorphins are your body's natural painkillers. You've got those too. You have sites that put out chemical to reduce the sensation of pain and pressure. So when you shut your hand in the car door and it hurts, your body is already releasing its own endorphins. Does it make the pain go all the way away? No, it does not. Okay? Because we, again, self-protective. If we broke our hand and it didn't hurt, would we not use our hand to allow the bones to heal? Absolutely not. We would all keep trucking along, wouldn't we? It doesn't hurt, it must be okay. So the body doesn't do that. It says, I know you will use it, so it's going to continue to hurt, but it won't hurt as bad. That way you recognize you're wounded and you will not do things that are going to prevent it from healing. Body protects itself. Endorphins, though, as the natural painkiller, are affected by narcotics. Okay, so the OxyContin, the Vicodin, the Percocet, the Ultram, which just went scheduled, codeine, all of those stimulate endorphins. Okay, they stimulate more of it out there. Endorphins work in two ways. This is one where I'll tell you that spinal cord thing comes into play. Because the way narcotics work are twofold when we're using them for pain. They decrease the number of signals that are being sent to the brain about where the pain is. Well, that'll change the priority, won't it? If I'm only getting 50,000 signals about a broken leg instead of 150,000, how much does it hurt? Your brain will say it hurts a lot less, won't it? Okay? Here's where the high comes, though. Because the chemical, the narcotics, the painkillers get into the brain and they scramble the way the cerebral cortex thinks about the pain. And so it doesn't think it's in pain anymore. That's that floaty feeling that you get. Okay, so it works twofold. I have less of a priority going up because I'm not getting as many signals. And then the signals that come up, the cerebral cortex takes that signal and says, oh, this is what it is. And it says it's the wrong thing. Doesn't perceive it as pain anymore. That's why I, when I was a surgical nurse, could get you up out of bed after surgery. Even though you'd look at me and say, but yeah, you got your pain medicine. Come on, let's go. I was counting on it working like it was supposed to. And it does. When we use pain pills, narcotics, and we're not a regular user, they're sedating. They tend to put most of us to sleep. So people that are taking them for pain after surgery will take it and they kind of get sleepy and they're non-functional as they're in that floaty state. Regular users lose the sleepiness. So our regular recreational pain pill users are awake and looking at you. And I will tell you, my regular users are where I see short-term memory changes because they don't remember short-term. They will forget a conversation that they had with you yesterday when they're on their drug. Short-term memory losses with narcotic use when you are a regular user. Okay? So those are the 5 chemicals that we have, the major ones in our brain that when we talk about drugs, I always will come back to and point out this is what this drug affects, this is how this looks, this is what's going on. But I want you to have a base for what they look like and what they do normally. Thank you for your attention. My name is Cary Pilet.